Josh Allen got real on Lamar Jackson and gave him plenty of praise after finding out that they would be going head-to-head. We talk about that. The former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver Mike dropping the MVP conversation, an initial look at the Ravens and Bills divisional round matchup, and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens WR, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens podcast, so of course, we bring you the Ravens news, analysis, updates 5 days per week, plus more. Plus, we go live after every single Ravens game and after every piece of Ravens big news. So tell a friend, tell a family member that we are here for them and we are here for you over on Locked On Ravens. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. We are here. It is Monday, and it is another week of preparation for a playoff game. The Ravens and the Bills will be facing off. It was officially official yesterday. The Bills dismantled the Broncos, and it'll be the Ravens traveling to Buffalo to face off against the Bills. We found out late last night that the game is going to be played on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be the last game of the divisional round primetime matchup. So John Harbaugh, who is incredible in primetime games against the Bills, who have not lost at home this year, something's got to give. Something's got to give. So we're going to obviously dive into some initial thoughts on the Ravens and Bills matchup. We did go live after we found out, right after. It was initial reaction, instant reaction episode yesterday. So if you want more of an instant reaction, be sure to check out our stream from yesterday. But we're going to talk about it a little bit here today as well. I'm going to talk about today Lamar Jackson getting some praise from Josh Allen, Josh getting real on Lamar and what happened last time. And also, second segment, we're going to get into a former Ravens wide receiver, Mike dropping the MVP conversation, which I know, honestly, in my opinion, the MVP conversation is kind of like whatever at this point. Like, it's the playoffs, it's whatever. But there were some really good points made, so I do want to talk about it. Let's dive into it. Josh Allen giving some praise to Lamar Jackson. And really, look, I know the MVP conversation and the discourse around these two guys has gotten pretty toxic, and I've tried to make it very clear here on Locked On Ravens that I think both guys are incredible players. I think they are both incredible quarterbacks, and both have cases for the MVP award. This is not like a runaway thing for either candidate. I've made it also clear that Lamar Jackson is my pick for the MVP, but it's not taking away from what Josh has done. But the conversation, I think, surrounding the MVP has gotten very toxic, and I think that has gotten, way out of hand. But these two guys have so much respect for each other. And so Josh Allen was asked right after the game, he couldn't even celebrate the Denver win. He was asked right after the game about facing off against Lamar. And what Josh ended up saying about Lamar was, first of all, he said that they got beat pretty badly during the game in week 4. He said they got after us early this year. It's a great team. It's a great QB with Lamar and what he's able to do. He's one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league. He's so fun to watch. And obviously mentioned the fact that he'll be facing off against the defense. He'll watch the defense on film this week. He's not going to be watching Ravens offensive tape. That makes no sense. I know when people talk about quarterback battles, it's like, oh, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, who's going to come out on top? But it's not like Josh is trying to get the best. It's not like Lamar's playing pass rusher, or, it's not like Josh is playing corner out there. Like, it's Ravens offense versus Bills defense, and then Bills offense versus Ravens defense. But this is a long line of praise that both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have given one another. And obviously it's going to be more of the same this week. Josh will be asked about Lamar again. Lamar will be asked about Josh. And it's kind of that whole conversation. Guys who came into the league together, both in the 2018 draft class, they have turned out to be the two best quarterbacks from that class and have both grown a lot over the course of their careers. But obviously when you talk about the dynamic ability of both of these players, they have similarities and differences, but they are both game changers. And the way that Josh has played this season, in my opinion, Josh will be, look, accolades, it's Mahomes, right? I'm not saying that all time Josh or Lamar is better than Mahomes in terms of accolades, because that's just not true. Mahomes has 3 Super Bowls, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of who's played the best this season, I think that Josh is the best quarterback that the Ravens are going to face in the postseason. Mahomes has had, by Mahomes standards, a down season. Josh, to me, is going to be the best quarterback in the playoffs that Baltimore faces. I think it's vice versa for Buffalo, obviously, because I think Lamar's been the best quarterback in the league this year. I think Josh has been the second best quarterback, and both of them have been incredible. So this is a battle, to me, of the 2 best quarterbacks in the league this season, and I think it's going to be a super exciting matchup, because the way that Buffalo and Baltimore's offense has been able to perform this year, it's always going to be a situation where if one of these offenses gets going, it's going to be really hard to stop it. That momentum, we know that the Ravens, they thrive off of momentum. Buffalo does as well. There are a bunch of stats we'll get to a little bit later in the show about that. But for the Ravens and the Bills, having that guy that you have to face off against for an entire 60 minutes, we saw it in week 4, where Lamar was just making play after play. And I get it. Oh, Derrick Henry had 199, yada, yada, yada. Yes, Derrick Henry had a great game. He was amazing. But that doesn't take away from what Lamar did. And then Josh in that game against Baltimore had a couple of plays. Now, obviously, it wasn't a great game for Josh and the Bills overall. I mean, Baltimore waxed him, ran him out of the stadium, ran him out of Baltimore. But there was that one play that he was running around on the sideline and threw the ball deep, right? That was a really big play from Josh. And then he had a couple of other ones too. But to me, it's about trying to neutralize that whatever quarterback you're going up against, whether it's Baltimore's defense or Buffalo's defense, because you're not going to stop these guys. And both elevate talent. I think that's been a conversation. And there have been all sorts of narratives throughout the MVP conversation. And again, it's gotten to a point where a lot of people are just tuning it out now because the voting is in, like it's done. When we talk about playoffs have no bearing on what that award's going to look like. And honestly, these 2 teams don't care about that right now. Lamar doesn't care about it. Josh doesn't care about it. The Ravens don't care about it. The Bills don't care about it, right? I know that it's a talking point. Everybody's going to still be talking about it. But both these guys are so good. I think the Ravens love this. I think the Ravens love that they're going to play Buffalo. They want the challenge. If you remember, back in 2012, 2013, when they won the Super Bowl, they had to go through a gauntlet to get there. It was rookie Andrew Luck, who was really good for the Colts that season. And obviously, his career wasn't very long, but his rookie year, I mean, he was just getting into the league, but he was really good. And then he had to go face Peyton Manning's Broncos in Denver. He had to go face Tom Brady's Patriots in Foxborough, and then the 49ers in the Hard Bowl. That was a tough stretch, but you know what? These guys are competitors, and, I've talked to players on the Ravens and, guys who want to make sure that, we don't want a team that's going to go out there and like they're injured or it's an easy win. Like, you want to be able to play the best and show your dominance and go as a competitor and beat that team. So if you have to face the Steelers, if you have to face the Bills and then the Chiefs and then whoever it'll be in the Super Bowl, Philly, Detroit, whatever, that's a gauntlet. And that's what these guys want. They want to get up for that game. They want to play the best. And Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, they are the best. It is best on best. 2 guys who have taken the league by storm this season. And it's one of the many reasons why you look at the respect that both Lamar and Josh have for each other. And I think it's a really cool storyline in itself, especially when it comes to everything that this MVP conversation has turned into, by no fault of Josh and by no fault of Lamar. Obviously, it's been a lot of different talking heads talking about it and, making things here. It's been the whole 9 yards. So I think it's really cool that Josh gave Lamar some early props, some early respect. I wouldn't expect anything less. Plus, again, there's the whole notion of bulletin board material. And I think that both these teams will be pretty careful, in my opinion, of not letting that happen. I know that the Steelers talked a little spicy. Maybe it happens with the Bills, but I'm not expecting that to happen personally. So cool for Josh to say that, Lamar's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league, if not the most dynamic, and just goes to show you how much respect Josh does have for Lamar Jackson. And the fact that both these guys love watching each other, right? We've heard both of them say that. Josh said it again yesterday. Both these guys respect each other's game and they love watching each other's game. We all sit here and we say how fun it is to watch these two guys play. The respect in that same sentiment is shared by those guys as well. So obviously the Bills will be thinking about the game that happened at M&T Bank Stadium earlier in the season, but these are two different teams, as we'll talk about coming up in the show. But coming up in the second part of the show, former Ravens wide receiver dropped the mic on the MVP and Lamar Jackson conversation, but we'll talk about it more from what Lamar Jackson has grown into, especially comparing it to this game we just watched him play against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card round. So stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. Let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. The strongest hiring data available. LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have or how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when you pull the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about it that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I've had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is a subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future, no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you still on this Monday edition. Ravens and Bills will face off less than a week from today, Sunday, 6:30 p.m., Orchard Park. It's going to be a good one. I'm really pumped for it personally. I know a lot of people, it might depend on your view of the Chiefs, and I know here in Baltimore, nobody's taking the Chiefs lightly based off of how those matchups have gone over the years, but the Chiefs haven't looked completely like the Chiefs this season, so a lot of people, at least maybe more nationally, have said, oh, is this the AFC Championship game between Baltimore and Buffalo? But I know personally, I'm not overlooking Kansas City. You cannot do that to the three-time champs, back-to-back champs, Mahomes, Reed. It's one game at a time, right? And right now it's a divisional round. If the Ravens make it to the championship game and they play the Chiefs, then we can talk about that. But it's all eyes ahead to Buffalo right now. And I thought that this former Ravens wide receiver had an incredible point. This was before the Ravens and Steelers matched up with one another in the wild card round. And I want to talk about what he said. And, it was a mic drop on the whole MVP conversation, but I don't want to take it from an MVP perspective because, again, I just think that's a very tired conversation right now. I want to take it from what Lamar has become and especially what we saw in this wild card round game against the Steelers. So Steve Smith Sr., who obviously played in Carolina for a lot of seasons, but I think really embraced Baltimore during his 3 seasons with the team. And he's a Baltimore guy. Like he embraces Baltimore. He loves Baltimore. He was asked about Lamar Jackson and what Lamar needs to do in the playoffs and the whole MVP conversation. And he said that Lamar just needs to be Lamar. It's not about mobility. It's about what he does from his shoulder up. And, talked about all the season records and all this different stuff with career. But then he was asked, so Steve Smith Sr., Lamar Jackson is the MVP. And Steve Smith Sr. said, no, Lamar Jackson is the standard now. And that's just like, boom. That's a mic drop moment right there from Steve Smith Sr. And the way that, he's trying to get this point across, what he's trying to mean by this is that the way that quarterback, at least this is my interpretation. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the way that I interpret what Steve Smith said is that the way quarterback is played or has been played over the majority of NFL history, it's all, pocket passers. There's a certain way a quarterback is supposed to play the game, is supposed to do things. And I think Lamar has been such a trendsetter. Lamar has been a guy that has broken a lot of boundaries at the quarterback position. And I think for the best. I think Lamar has changed the game for the better. And when you talk about maybe what you envision the game will look like in the next 10, 15, 20 years, the game is always evolving. And Lamar Jackson has come into the NFL and flipped a lot of narratives on their heads, not only about himself, but about the quarterback position in general. Because there are a lot of quarterbacks, even in the past, who are asked to play wide receiver like Lamar. Their abilities aren't believed in, and guys just want to come in the league and they want to be in the league, and they're like, I want to be a quarterback, but okay, like if that's the only position I'm going to be able to play, then that's what it is. And sometimes, it's unfortunate because I think those guys deserve shots at quarterback. I don't think it's fair to just, put them in a box like that. I feel like that's disrespectful personally. But, we had heard it's very clear that Lamar was asked to play wide receiver from teams. And obviously his talent was good enough to where teams liked him at quarterback and he didn't have to do that. But Lamar refused that. And to me, the way that Lamar has evolved over the course of his career, Steve Smith saying Lamar Jackson is the standard now, this isn't even just for mobile quarterbacks. Like, again, I think Lamar is put in a box unfairly for a lot of different reasons. But the fact that he is like, okay, yes, he's a mobile quarterback. He's a dual threat guy. Yes, he uses his legs effectively. That's a big part of his game. I'm not trying to say that that's not who he is. But what he is a quarterback. He throws the football effectively, and he also can run it effectively. He's a heck of a football player, but to box him in and just say, oh, he's just a mobile quarterback. No, he's not just a mobile quarterback. Lamar Jackson is the standard for quarterback, period. That's it. No mobile, no dual threat, none of that. Quarterback, period. Don't put him in a box of just being a mobile guy. Like, yes, he is. But he's someone that when we look back on this 10, 20, 30 years after Lamar Jackson retires, my personal opinion is we will still see the effects of what Lamar Jackson has done and will continue to do over the course of his career. And you saw that in the wild card game against the Steelers on Saturday, where it's not just standards of effective play and heroic plays and whatever it may be. The gravity that Lamar Jackson has on the football field is unprecedented and honestly is one of the greatest gravities, or, if you want to call it one of the greatest gravitational pulls that we have ever seen, maybe at any position. Because when Lamar Jackson does not have the ball in his hand, it does not matter. There are still 2 to 4 guys following him on almost every single play. And I'm not saying Lamar's the only guy to have that happen. I mean, there are plenty of, we talked about Josh Allen on the first part of the show. Josh is a guy that has gravitational pull. Mahomes obviously is. When you talk about different positions, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, like there are a lot of players and have been a lot of players throughout history that have had gravitational pull. But Lamar Jackson puts so much stresses on defenses with his arm, with his legs. That is the standard. That is what do you want to call it? An MVP standard? You want to call it, a great quarterback standard, best in the league standard. Lamar has broken all of those barriers, and he has done it while facing an immense amount of doubt and immense amount of criticism. And Lamar is not the only quarterback to face criticism, but I just feel like it's different for every player, different for every quarterback. And Lamar Jackson, there are a lot of different reasons why people hate on him. I think a lot of it is stubbornness. I think a lot of it is, we could go on and on and on about the reasons why Lamar Jackson has faced all that criticism. But when you see a game with Lamar Jackson, that he has so much gravity, he can throw for 175 passing yards, and his team feels like they are the best team you've ever seen on that football field in absolute dominance for 4 quarters. Yeah, he has guys around him that help him. Derrick Henry's been a huge help to Lamar this season, much like Lamar's been a huge help to Derrick Henry because Lamar is an elevator, right? I think Derrick Henry elevates guys around him as well. It's a matter to me of Lamar Jackson getting the respect he deserves, and Lamar has, I think, earned that from a lot of people. But the setting of a standard, like Steve Smith Sr. said, who has gone to bat for Lamar, who goes to bat for the Ravens, obviously, and embraces the city like we talked about earlier, it's a really cool thing to hear because I expected Lamar to be an incredible player. I was in on Lamar since his Louisville days. I loved Lamar as a prospect coming out of college. I wanted the Ravens to take him in 2018. I was ecstatic when they traded back into the first round. I was incredibly happy when they did it. But I think that we talk about Lamar now. Imagine, let's look ahead for a little bit. We'll just do it quickly. Let's say Lamar wins the Super Bowl. Let's say he does it this year. Let's just say he does it this year. And let's say he wins the MVP. We're talking about a 3-time MVP, 1-time Super Bowl champion at the age of 28 years old, still with years ahead of him, hopefully, of incredible football. That is a standard to look up to. Because at that point, you're talking about top 10 conversations, top 5 conversations. I don't know. I mean, we'd have to figure it out some way, shape, or form. But that resume is already an all-time resume. So I think what Steve Smith Sr. said was a really cool way to kind of encapsulate everything where, in his eyes, yeah, MVP conversation is great, but there's a different conversation. There are elevated conversations that we can have about Lamar Jackson that go beyond the MVP scope, which I think is a really, really cool thing. Coming up, though, in the final part of the show, Ravens and Bills, initial thoughts. Talk about some matchup data, some storylines, some personnel issues that both teams might have with the other, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. So Ravens and Bills. Ravens open up as 1.5-point underdogs over on FanDuel. So if you like the Bills as the home favorite or the Ravens as the road underdog, be sure to pick your side over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, talking Ravens football. Ravens and Bills facing off at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. Should be an incredible game, and I want to get into a little bit now of initial thoughts from me on the matchup. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we did go live immediately after we found this news out, so for a more in-depth, longer conversation, because we're only going to spend a segment on it here. I spent an entire show on it yesterday. Be sure to check out that show if you haven't already. But my initial thoughts on it is that I like the matchup for the Ravens. And the reason I like the matchup for the Ravens is I just don't think the Bills on the defensive side of the ball have the power to stop the Ravens on the ground. This is a different team than we saw. Both sides, Ravens and Bills, 2 different teams. We have to put context into this. We did it last week against Pittsburgh with some of the injuries that Pittsburgh had. Same thing with Buffalo. Buffalo did not have 3 of their best defensive players in the Week 4 game. And that is something that we have to acknowledge. Now, the Ravens didn't have Michael Pierce, but in terms of absences, Buffalo definitely was hurting more in that department. Matt Milano wasn't there. Taron Johnson wasn't there. Christian Benford wasn't there. Those are all guys that help in a really big way, and they all weren't available for Buffalo in that game. Now, do I think that those 3 players stopped Derrick Henry from, getting 150 plus? Probably not. I'm sure that it helps. I know Henry had 199. That's why I said 150 plus. But the Bills just don't have a super physical defensive front. They have good players on their defensive front. I think Ed Oliver is a good player. They have other their pass rushers like Von Miller, who's, is not a physical guy or anything, but they have AJ Epinesa and Daquan Jones. They brought in a couple of guys in off of waivers or free agency in the middle of the season, such as a Jordan Phillips. They have Dwayne Smoot. So it's a good defense in terms of names. I mean, in the secondary, it's a little bit, Taylor Rapp is there with Sewell Douglas, who they brought over from Green Bay last year. And, again, Taron Johnson, who's a really, really good player. But I just feel like Baltimore's offensive line, the way that they have played, the Bills have a great offensive line, but I think the Ravens have played really, really well up front. And it's kind of the same key I put with the Pittsburgh games. Like whichever offensive line can play well or play better and protect their quarterback and open up rushing lanes for their running back, that's going to be the big thing. And Ravens offense, Bills offense, if you want to call that a wash, then okay. Like both offenses, I think you're going to score points. There are ways that this can be a blowout, but I feel like both teams are going to score their fair share of points, keep up with one another, unless we kind of see the game flow that we saw in week 4, but I'm not anticipating the exact same thing to happen. But the Baltimore defense versus the Buffalo defense, I just think that Baltimore's unit is better. And I think that's where I believe Baltimore has the advantage. Buffalo could have a great defensive game. They have the talent to do so. They're the 17th best passing defense in the league. They're the 19th best rushing defense in the league in terms of net yards per attempt. They are one of the worst third down defenses in all of football. They can't get off the field, giving up 43.8% on third down. Their fourth down and red zone defenses are middling. Nothing too crazy there. But the Ravens, on the other hand, if you want to look at their conversions, they are a top 3 third down offense. So it is Ravens' strength on Bills' weakness. And one of the ways that I think that either team, because both teams did this in the wild card round, one of the biggest ways that either team can win this game is hold on to the football. Baltimore held on to the ball for 40 minutes against the Steelers. And the Bills' strategy, at least what they were able to do, was hold on to the ball, run the clock out, and just ball control. Whichever team, we always talked about, when Greg Roman it was a Greg Roman thing, honestly, because Todd Monken's offenses can be really, really efficient in terms of how they score the football. It's kind of a either which way thing. But with Greg Roman, we would talk about all the time. Did the Ravens win the time of possession battle? That usually correlated to wins or losses. It's not that way under Todd Monken, but I think that it's a sound strategy, right? I mean, what's one of the best ways to counter one of the best players in all of football in Josh Allen, or one of the best players in football in Lamar Jackson? It's keep him off the field. Don't let him on the field. And how do you do that? You hold on to the football. You don't let the opposing offense snap the football. You keep them on the sideline. So that to me is a really, really big, important part of this as well. Obviously, for both teams, stopping the run, James Cook versus Derrick Henry. You have multiple good weapons in the pass game. Not sure Zay Flowers is going to be able to play in this game, but we will see. I know that that's something to monitor throughout the entire course of the week. So there's so many storylines in this game. Obviously, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen going to be a really big one. Coaching as well. John Harbaugh versus Sean McDermott, two, I guess, very controversial coaches in, both fan bases circles in some way, shape, or form. So I'm excited for this game. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a good one. We're going to have so much coverage of it throughout the course of the week and the weekend leading up to it on Locked On Ravens. And that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. On the way out, hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, of course, it is more Ravens coverage for you. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.